her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. It's finally that day. We've been talking about this pretty much all month. That for the first time on the show, a little bit later on, we're going to be joined by Christine and Abby Romeo. You know them from the hit show Love on the Spectrum US and Abby's brilliant love story on that show. It just gives me goosies, right? But Abbey is this wonderful, talented, multi-talented professional that you guys need to know about. So we're going to be joined by her and her mother, who I've been talking about this. I'm going to tell the story about how I met her mother a long time ago. A long time ago, before either of us ever thought about having children. And her mother is the reason why I do red carpets now. So there you go. And I didn't know that until about 2 years ago. I knew that there was a person that was responsible for that. I just didn't know it was Abby Romeo's mom. It's a very small world. And we'll share all of that and perhaps more a little bit later. And I promised everybody we're going to talk about lions. We're going to talk about mermaids for sure. And we're going to talk about hats for sure. So, but if you're joining us right now and you're watching us live, we're so thrilled that you're here. Please feel to write in questions, comments, whatever as we go through. We did pre-tape this show for our convenience and their convenience, but you can still write in your questions, your comments. Chris is showing you some of the different ways that you can connect with us, whether it's during the live show. We know that most of you are listening during podcast, and we love that. When you listen during podcasts, there are a little bit more advertisements, maybe because there is a cost. It's a free upload whenever you get a free download, I guess. When you get the podcast, it's free to you. It is not free to us to create. So there are sponsors for it. We hope you embrace that and enjoy that. If you are not, for whatever reason, and you're like, I just need to go on a hike and I don't want any ads and I want this content in that way, you can by going to glow.fm/autismlive. When you subscribe, it's $5 a month to get the ad-free podcast, and you get not only everything that we do at Autism Live, but you get everything Ask Dr. Doreen and all of the other podcasts that we are incubating as well, and you get them ad-free. So I hope if that's what you need, that you will get that. We always like to start the show with something that we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym. We try to figure out what exactly are we talking about and why are we using this term and who uses this term and how will this benefit our lives. So we give you an actual definition. Used to be back in the beginning, I would just make fun of the actual definitions because they often contained twice as much jargon as anything else, and we would need 3 dictionaries to figure out what the definition meant, right? It's gotten better. I have to say that in the 14 years that we've been doing this, it's gotten better. It's almost like someone bought a vowel and said, oh, I don't think these definitions are working. But always, we also give you a working definition too. Sometimes they are also definitions that we've gotten from various sources, and I try to credit them whenever appropriate. But always we have a little discussion about why is this term maybe important to you? What do you need to know about it? What are the nuances to it that might be missed if you weren't looking closely? So take a look. I think this is the first time that we've done this jargon. The jargon of the day today is masking. This is a very hot topic, and it's a word that comes with a lot of connotations, and not all of them are good. So let's take a look, and our first definition comes to us from Henry Ford Health. They say the term, quote, autism masking is used to describe behaviors used by people with ASD to suppress or hide the signature characteristics of the disorder. It can also mean mirroring the behavior of neurotypical people and developing quote, scripts that work in social situations. Okay, so there's a lot there to unpack. But I think my immediate reaction to that, the reaction of people suppressing who they are in order to, look like someone else doesn't feel good, right? That feels like passing. That feels like having to take who you are and hide your light under a bushel so that you can please who, right? I think we can all agree that's not something that we would want to have to behave in or to force upon somebody else. Let's take a look at a different definition, and this one comes to us from Wikipedia. I like a couple of aspects about this definition, which is the conscious or subconscious suppression of autistic behaviors and compensation of difficulties in social interaction by autistic people with the goal of being perceived as neurotypical. This still hurts my heart, that if there is you feel the need to behave in a certain way, to be perceived as a certain way. It's not my favorite thing, but I like about this definition that we're identifying that it can be conscious or subconscious, and that we're trying to hide our difficulties. And I want to say that I think that is a very specific thing for autistic masking. And I think that it's very important for people such as myself who do not identify as being on the spectrum to tread carefully here. I absolutely want to tread carefully here because I know that from my friends who are on the autism spectrum, they tell me that this is a very real thing, that they do feel obligated to behave in a certain way, to pass, to not be perceived as being weird or odd or different or wrong. And that hurts my heart. I do also want to say that a lot of times, I think most of us, whenever we're looking at something, we want to see, how can I identify with this, right? I think that's a human trait where we say, I don't know that I entirely understand this, so I want to put it through my filter. And that we come back with the fact that we all mask. Oh, let's all take a breath for a second. Because there are times when I am someplace and I am trying to behave in a way that isn't me because I don't want people to see me struggling, right? And I don't want to be perceived as being somebody who doesn't understand how to behave, a bit about all these things. But that is vastly different than when someone is doing autistic masking. Yes, we all mask sometimes. There are places where we will specifically mask and behave in a certain way where we know the rules are that. But that is different than true autistic masking. And it is different for a lot of different reasons because the intensity of it. And I don't have a disorder. I don't have something that somebody has said you qualify for something that's considered a disorder or disabling, right? I have challenges that does not equal a disability. And I think we all need to be careful and mindful that we are not creating these false equivalencies, if that makes sense. And we also need to be careful. I'm always saying that what I want to be is the best possible ally to my son and others who identify as being on the spectrum, neurodivergent, neurodiverse, whatever words, autistic, whatever words that they want to use. That while we feel, those of us who want to be good allies, while we feel that need to be like, oh, I'm like that too, that we slow our roll and realize that, we wouldn't do that with other disabilities. We wouldn't do that with other challenges. I'm just going to use the example that my mom was born with both of her feet backwards. She was considered both feet club feet. And she was in braces or on in a wheelchair or in crutches a lot of my life. I would never have walked up to my mom when she was in pain and said, yeah, I have that pain too. I just wouldn't have done that because I understood it was different. That I too have pain, absolutely. It is not the same. It is not equal. It cannot be on a scale with what her pain was. I think we get that with other things, and I'm trying very hard to learn that. It is a hair trigger, though. We go, oh, I do that too. We're talking about an entirely different thing. So we want to be in a space where we are not mistakenly encouraging masking. And I have to say this too, that sometimes we're teaching a skill, right? And you can teach a skill without asking someone to mask who they are while they're learning the skill or while they're doing the skill. That's really important for us all to just breathe and take in. It's a lot. It's a lot. My guests today are absolutely amazing human beings. I can't wait for them to come and talk with you guys. Of course, I'm talking about Abbey and Christine Romeo. You've seen them on Love on the Spectrum US. They're going to be talking with us about, what autism is like after 18. And we're going to ask them about what the onslaught of interaction, social media has been like since the show came out. I'm sure that it's mostly positive, but we're going to, social media. We're going to talk about what that's like and we're going to ask some questions of Abbey about Love on the Spectrum and give her the opportunity to answer or not, because I know that there are some things that they can't talk about. So all that's coming up right after these messages. Welcome back. As I said before, I'm so excited about this show because for the first time ever, we are having Abbey and Christine Romeo with us on the show. Abbey has sort of been on the show before because we showed one of her music videos before, but not like this. And this is going to be so much fun. I'm so looking forward to it. For those of you who don't know and have not been watching Love on the Spectrum US, let me tell you a little bit about them, and then we're going to unpack all of this. Christine is an amazing mom, first of all. As you can see on the show, she is an honors graduate of the University of Massachusetts and spent part of her college years at University of Warwick in Coventry, England. I'll bet there's a story there. She has been a single mom to both Benjamin and Abbey since they were 5 and 6. She has spent 22 years in therapy rooms, IEPs, and creating individualized interventions for Abbey. She is an avid speaker on autism and overcoming obstacles. She recently spoke at the Northern California Neurodiversity Symposium alone with legendary autism advocate Dr. Temple Grandin. Her day job is Director of Communications and Senior Programs at the Farrah Fawcett Foundation in Los Angeles, which supports cancer research and patient support. She appears on Love on the Spectrum US with Abbey and is on TikTok, where she is known as Abby's Mom 17, sharing her autism journey with Abbey to over 1 million followers. And her daughter, Abbey, who is an amazing, brilliant, talented young woman, Earned a certificate of completion at the Bridgeport program at the Help Group in Los Angeles in 2016. She went on to attend Miller Career and Transition Center, who we've featured here before on the show, and finished with training in textiles, farming, bakery, and retail in 2020. I didn't know that. Congratulations, Abbey. She was a member of the award-winning Miracle Project, and later Spectrum Laboratory in Los Angeles, which uses the arts to expand creativity, social skills, and musical interests. Abbey has written and performed in 5 music videos singing about autism. They are all available on YouTube. She has worked for 2 years as a volunteer in animal rescue. She has a paper shredding business. Also, I did not know that. Cat sits for the neighbors and has a thriving hat business called Made by Abbey. She is a verified influencer on TikTok and Instagram and appears in the Emmy award-winning show Love on the Spectrum US on Netflix. Abbey has had 20 years of speech therapy and other services to get her where she is today. Oh my goodness. Let's get them in here. Good morning, Abbey and Christine.
Morning.
We're so thrilled to have you here.
Great to be here.
Well, I have
So good to be here.
Yeah, I have so many things I want to talk about. But I don't know, Abbey, if you remember the first time that I met you, because I tell this story every time Jason and Garth are on the show. I tell them about, there was some event that was happening at the Ed Asner Family Center, and I was sitting on the couch waiting for my son, and here was this beautiful young woman who came and sat on the couch next to me. It was you. You turned to me and you said, "Are you the lady who does that show, Autism Live?" And I said, "Yes, I'm Shannon. Nice to meet you." And you very proudly stuck out your hand and you said, "I'm Abbey and I am a performer with Spectrum Labs, Spec Labs, excuse me, because I have to get that right." And I was so impressed by you. And I tell that story to Jason and Garth all the time because you were so confident and self-possessed. I mean, the thing that we want all young performers to be, it was just amazing. And I remember feeling like I just met a star. And obviously I was right. Do you remember that, Abbey?
Oh, yeah, I sure do.
That's amazing. And I asked your mom if it was okay if I told the story of when the first time was that I met her. And I've been trying to figure out what year that would have been. Christine, do you have any idea?
Not really. I mean, it could have been the 80s, right?
It had to, I'm trying to think when I graduated from graduate school. I think I graduated in 90, so it probably was like 88, 89.
Yeah.
I was in graduate school at the National Theater Conservatory, and in a very small class of people, there were 12 of us in our class. And one of the gentlemen that was in my class said to a couple of us, "Hey, I need some help. I have a very special guest arriving at the Denver airport on Friday night, and he offered to pay us to play the role of two of them were going to be reporters, and he asked for me to have a microphone and pretend that it was a red carpet. And when this special young woman that he wanted to impress, and he had roses and everything to meet this young woman at the airport, he said to me, "I want you to pretend like you're paparazzi, and it's a red carpet. I want you to stick the microphone in her face, and I want you to start asking her questions about, is she excited to be here in Denver for the weekend?" And he said, "Just, Shannon, make stuff up." And so we stood there and waited. I have to say, he was very nervous and very excited. And he's not someone who usually allows you to see that, right?
Yes.
But here came your mom, Abbey. Your mom was the woman who got off the plane that he was meeting. She came down. This was back in the day when you could go up to see people as they got off the airplane. And I did. I shoved a microphone in your face and started asking you questions about what you were doing and, what your next project was. And you had to have been like, what in the heck is happening here?
Oh, no, it was crazy. But he's got such a great sense of humor, our friend Jim.
Yes.
So I would expect nothing less because he's just such a great guy and so funny. That's something he would do.
Well, and we all had such a good time. And then afterwards, you went with Jim to, have your weekend. And the three of us got back in our cars and left. But on the way back, the other two said to me, you were a little too good at that red carpet thing. You should do that. And I was like, what? I'm not going to do that. But every time since then that I've had to go on a red carpet, I was like, well, I managed to do it then. I'm just going to pretend that I can do it because I can do it. But I didn't realize that was your mom, Abby. This was how many years ago? And I didn't realize.
I mean, this was literally like 35 years ago. I was in my early 20s, I believe.
Yeah. And
really?
Isn't that nutty that's
crazy.
How but that's how the autism community works.
Yes.
Do you want to tell the story that you told us right before we came on?
I mean, it's just so crazy. So one of our closest friends was Atticus Baldwin. His mother is Isabella Hoffman, the actress. And 100 years ago, when I was involved in that world, I got a call to understudy a woman who just got a pilot and had to drop out of a sketch comedy show. So I jumped in and studied a woman. Her name was Isabella Hoffman. And then I opened the show 3 days later. And she kind of remained as like I was the understudy, she was the leading lady. And then years later, Abby's hanging out with this kid named Atticus Baldwin, and they were good friends. And that's Isabella's son. So what a small world.
What a small world. And to think that we all met you years before we had our kids. And the universe said we would like for you women to have other things in common.
Yeah.
And here we are. So
yes, there's a lot of that overlap.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, those are not the only stories. So I want to talk about a bunch of different things. Abby, since we've never had you on before, I wondered if you would mind telling us what it was like for you growing up and being on the spectrum. And I don't know, what words do you use? Do you say on the spectrum? Do you say autistic? Do you say have autism?
I think having autism or on the spectrum or neurodiverse.
Okay. How did that feel for you growing up? What was that like?
When I was a child, my childhood was very, very hard. My brain didn't do what I was telling you to do, and I got very, very jealous of neurotypical girls because they could do things that I couldn't do. So whenever a neurotypical girl would sneeze, I would sneeze because I was trying to be like them.
Wow.
And even though it made them uncomfortable, but I was trying to, I didn't want to feel left out in the cold.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because, we talk to a lot of self-advocates and everybody's story is so different and what it felt like for them was different. When did you know, sometimes people say, well, I knew that I was different than so-and-so. And sometimes people knew about the diagnosis early on. Did you know about the diagnosis or did you just see, I want to be more like those girls?
I couldn't really explain my emotions then.
Okay. That's fair. I appreciate it.
Do you want to tell her, Abby, how you discussed autism to find out about it? Remember you came to me? Do you want to tell her?
I came to my mom and asked if I had autism because I went to an autism school and they were saying the word autism there.
Oh. And
So she came to me. Do you want to tell the whole story? You came to me. We were in the car.
I was in the car and I asked if I had autism. My mom said yes, and we both started crying.
Oh,
That was one crazy car ride.
I'll bet.
And she really surprised me, and you were 9 years old.
Oh, yeah.
The time you asked me, and I won't forget that moment.
Well, and we have seen in some of your, we shared a video on our Stories from the Spectrum of yours, where in the beginning of the video, you talked about that there was a period of time that you were frustrated with the way your brain worked.
Yeah, my mom filmed me when I was in junior high on my brain, and I was about my brain, and I was like, why won't my brain do what I'm telling it to do?
Yeah. But do you feel that way now, Abby?
No, because you know what? This is why I've always wanted to be all grown up, because I knew I would have more language.
I love that. I mean, I just got goosebumps. And so, I mean, we're watching you on the show, Abby, and it just looks like you're leading your best life right now. Does it feel that way to you?
Yes, it does.
I kind of want to cry because I know several women who have said to me that, and I don't want to do spoiler alerts. If you haven't watched season 1 and you haven't watched season 2, I don't know what you've been doing. You guys should go watch it. But there is a scene with you and do you call him your boyfriend? Do you call him your significant other? How do you call him? What do you call him? Do you use the word boyfriend?
What do you call David? She's asking.
Davey.
Okay.
What is he to you? You call him your boyfriend?
Yeah.
Okay. So you are with your boyfriend in what I think all of us would agree is a very romantic setting. And you guys are just kind of chilling out and sitting and talking in this very romantic setting. And I know so many grown women, Abby, who watched that and cried and said it was the most romantic thing they have ever seen on anything. That it's their idea of perfect romance. Do you know which scene I'm talking about?
Scene in season 2?
Yes. When you guys are
singing Lion King.
Yes. And where you guys are in that moment, I don't want to give it away because you're doing something very special, but it's very romantic. It's one of the most amazing, inspirational love things I think that anybody has ever seen. Did it feel like I always wonder when I see these things, were you aware of the cameras or was it just about you and your boyfriend then?
Just me and my boyfriend.
That's pretty amazing, Abby. I understand that you have a new song. Do you want to tell us about the new song categories?
Yes. My song categories I wrote with a woman named Casey Kelly, and it's about how the way my mind works. I put all the things I like in one category and all the bad things I don't like in another category.
I love that. When and where are we going to be able to see this?
Check out on YouTube.
Okay. Wonderful.
What's your YouTube, Abby?
Abbey.com.
No, that's not it.
AbbeyRomeo.com.
You don't even need to say .com. It's on YouTube.
It's on YouTube.
It's just Abby Romeo. Yep.
There we go. Love that. I also see that you have a YouTube. Well, I see you've got the Instagram is Hats by Abby, and Abby is BBEY, ABBEY. So people need to know that. You've got a TikTok, Hats by Abby, and Christine, your TikTok is Abby's Mom 17. But again, it's Abby with an E. We've talked a little bit about now you're growing up, and I'm sure that everybody wants to know, because you said how like it feels great for you as an adult, Abby, but I'm sure there are a lot of people who are looking for some hope, because so often we hear about how services end and there's a cliff and that after 18 is hard. But again, as much as Abby's living her best life, Christine, it looks like you are too. Talk to us a little bit about what happens after 18. What do we need to know?
So I've been kind of sort of doing a little bit of speaking on this topic because the first thing that I'd like to share is that Abby's had the most growth in her autism intervention journey since the age 18. So age of 18 to 25, which she is now, has been the most growth we've seen. And I think the system doesn't allow for constant support. So you, the caregiver or parent, has to be the bridge, has to navigate what those next steps are. Because after all these years of interventions and supports, you can fall off at 18, especially then 22, because 22 is when the regional center changes and you go into the adult program. But even after you get out of high school, if you don't go to a post-transition high school. So I've done a lot of understanding that purpose has to come first. And our kids on the spectrum need extra help with building confidence. And if we can work towards confidence, then we get more independence, and then we get the purpose. And then you get to your next step. And it's kind of uncharted territory. And I feel like that's the hard part, because there's a lot of parents that don't know how to take that next step. The resources are difficult. It's different in every state. Some states have great supports, others don't have much. Some people live in isolated areas and they just don't have access to stuff. So it's about sharing that information and I think cheering each other on so we can help them live their best lives.
Yeah. we've been doing a lot of shows this month, and I have to say, we had Dr. Temple Grandin on the other day. She's got a new book out about employment for
Yes.
adults on the spectrum, and so we were interviewing her about that, and I really had the aha moment that some of the things that we do as parents, that we're working in the wrong direction. That I know from me, my son's about to be 21. I've been finding it very hard to just like let go. I feel like I'm still supposed to be doing something, but Dr. Grandin let me know I am supposed to be doing something that for our teens and adults, that getting the first few jobs is really on us as parents. She made that very clear. She's like, don't count on the interview thing. You got to go through the back door. And she talked about entrepreneurship. And so this is an area that I want to get into with you guys, because I knew that you were making hats, Abby. I didn't know how gorgeous they are. They are absolutely stunning. I want to talk about how that got started, and how, like, if you're helping to support the business mom, who wants to answer how the hats thing started?
Abby, why don't you talk about your schooling and start there at Miller?
It all started out when I was in a work program called Textiles at my training school, and I learned how to make hats there with my teacher, Miss Carol. And that year she retired, and she came to the house and taught me how to make hats here. So in the Textiles work program, I learned how to make scarves on a floor loom or rigid pedal loom, and bracelets on a bead loom.
Amazing. And I've
Now, the one thing I will say about that particular component, because we're talking about what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
So Abby only knew how to do a part of the weaving. She didn't know how to do the beginning, middle, and end of the process. So I went back to Miller and I said, hey, can you create advanced weaving? She's the best weaver. She's highly focused. It was truly a miracle to find something that she connected with. So I went to the principal and I went to the teacher and I said, is this okay to do this advanced weaving? Teacher thought it was a great idea. Principal said, no, we don't do that here. And I said, well, she doesn't know how to do the whole process. So I left the school very defeated, and I had this idea that I was going to employ others that had crafts or skills, and I could do it online, and I could bring people even to my home. We'd set up a workroom, and I could create a couple jobs. And being shot down like that was devastating. So I was devastated for about a week, and then I called the teacher up, and I told her, and she said, well, I'm retiring, so I'm going to come to your house, and I'll show you how to do it if we can't do it here. And then that is how the teacher was instrumental in just being an amazing human being, Miss Carol. She came to our house and she showed us how to translate Abby skills onto a circular loom. And that's how the hat started. And I help Abby a little bit in tying them off, we call it, because that's a little bit tricky. But that's how we went around when the universe said no.
Yes. Well, what an important thing for us to hear about. And I got to say, that's right in line with what Temple was saying. Temple was saying that what we need is parents to step in and finesse things so that the job or the company, the business can get off the ground. So can we buy hats now?
Abby?
Yes, you can buy hats on madebyabby.com.
So I was looking at it on Instagram, but can we order certain types? Tell me how I would order something. Like, let's say I want a green hat and I want it like the one that I saw in the picture. Can I just specify that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
The way to have a business, Abby. You give the customer.
Thank you.
And I'm assuming that, you really like this, making the hats.
Yeah, I enjoy making hats.
Enjoy making hats. Okay. And are you going to branch out into other things besides hats? Do you think you're going to make scarves again, since you said that
someday? I just don't know how to figure it out.
Okay.
So that's one of the things about some of these programs is, Miller is a great school. Principal Wayne, who we initially started with, was extraordinary. He retired. And so when you have these certain rules, like if you're in the bakery, but you're not allowed to go into these areas of the kitchen, and you can't touch these pots and pans, and you can't use these utensils, you are limiting the skill. So you kind of learn half the skill. And there's liability and there's reasons why they don't want to do it, but they certainly did that with weaving and they didn't teach her the whole thing. So now that I understand a lot of this, it's me going online and using good old Google to find out how she can expand. There's a lot of how-to stuff on there, and that is part of how we have continued to build Abby's items that she sells. And we are moving to scarves, but I have to lead that charge.
Yeah.
And I will. And once I teach her, she's off and running.
Yeah.
Fast learner. I mean, the weaving thing was really a cool thing because the first day I walked into Miller and I saw her operating a big rigid head-a-loom, weaving these things together, I burst out crying because I simply couldn't believe what I was seeing.
Yeah. Well, you know, you're so talented in so many different directions, Abby. It doesn't surprise me.
Thank you.
I noticed that on your logo for Hats by Abbey, there is a mermaid.
Yes, there is, because when I was growing up, I've always loved mermaids since I was in kindergarten.
I promised people that we were going to talk about mermaids today. So,
Let's do it.
so what do you love about mermaids?
Well, when I first saw the movie Ariel, I mean, Little Mermaid, I identified with her because she wanted to be where the people were, and I wanted to be in school with the typical kids, just like that. So every time I watched the scene when Ariel went up to the surface, I felt like leaving the autism program, going into the typical school, just like that.
Wow. There's a
And her father wouldn't let her be with the humans because he thought they were dangerous.
Did you feel that ever growing up?
Kind of. Yeah.
Do you feel
Ariel
that
couldn't get her words out in her song. That's why I still even like her today. And when
Yeah.
she became a human, she couldn't talk. That's how I felt.
And she had a beautiful, beautiful voice. Did you realize at that point that you also had a beautiful, beautiful voice?
Yes, and both beautiful voices.
Amazing. When did you start to realize that she had this talent for singing, Mom?
Well, the funny thing is that Abby was probably 2.5 years old, and there were some signs of differences, but she could sing before she could talk. And she used music and stretches of lyrics and choruses and melodies throughout her earlier years to get that voice to work. I believe that music is an incredibly therapeutic tool for people on the spectrum, especially those that are struggling with expressive language or even what I call just engagement. You know, the thing about autism that's hard is you got to really look at how is this gigantic landscape affecting that individual person? Because there's so many manifestations now and the landscape is bigger than ever. So to me, being more specific, but I always try to say there was no engagement, you know, in those earlier years. And so we were struggling to get that like visual, like engage in anything. Like Abby wouldn't play with dolls. Abby wouldn't play with toys. Abby was very much alone in her own world. And it's very scary when you're trying to raise, you know, a child into this world that's not able to participate. And music was a bridge to bring her into this world. And so I actually have a tape of Abby singing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star when she was probably just under 3 years old. And I have the tape somewhere. I've yet to find it. And I remember hearing it and thinking, even though she wasn't talking, this beautiful voice came out. It was so angelic. And it gave me hope that she would be able to connect later down the road. But we've always used music. It's just been such a beautiful bridge.
You're also hilariously funny, Abby. Do people tell you that on a regular basis that you're so, so funny?
Yes.
The first time I ever heard of you or saw you was in a video. I think it's called Big Mouth. Is that right? No?
No. You mean the one, do I have a red top on?
Gosh.
That's the microphone video.
Yeah.
Okay. But I just remember thinking, oh my goodness, this young woman is hilarious and funny and talented and brilliant.
What video are you talking about? Which music video?
sure. There was a video, a music video that you did with Spec Labs, and I might have the wrong one. It might not have been the Big Mouth one. Was it the one? I feel like you were with Dom in it. Do you know what you've done
Dom did a video called Big Mouth, but that she wasn't in that one.
it must be another one because I
Yeah, there's
remember
several.
because I remember seeing one and I just was like, this girl is funny. This girl is brilliant. You have such a wonderful presence. I can completely understand why they wanted you for Love on the Spectrum because you're a very beautiful girl, but you just have a wonderful outlook and you're fun and you're funny. But I'm wondering I don't know how much we're allowed to talk about Love on the Spectrum. So if I ask something that I'm not allowed to ask, one of you tell me and I won't be offended. But I know that because I just got the email, that they're getting ready for season 3. Do we know if you will be involved in season 3?
That's probably not something that we really even know yet.
Okay.
I think they're doing their planning on that, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
But when you started, because it's a big decision to do that kind of a show, right?
Yes.
That, you didn't know the people that were working on it. I'm just wondering, were you guys concerned about anything when you started? Obviously, you liked it because you did season 2. But was it a little scary to let people into your home and say it's going to be okay to film while I go on dates? I would have been nervous. Were you nervous, Abby?
A little bit.
And
I mean,
as a parent,
it was a hard decision to do this. We didn't know what this show was when we Zoom call interviewed for him 3 or 4 times. All we knew it was some guy doing a documentary. I mean, that was it. And I had heard that before, and we've met a few other people and, those kinds of things. So there was really nothing. And then at the end of, I don't know, 4 or 5 Zoom calls, then they said it was Netflix. And I was like, oh, a Netflix show. And then later on, they said the name of the show was Love on the Spectrum and that we could go watch it on Netflix. So then we went and watched season 1. And, for me personally, because of the diversity of the spectrum, it seemed that their season 1 in Australia, those people were so very verbal and functioning and having jobs and traveling Europe. Conversational language isn't the easiest thing for the autism in this family. So I felt it would be like having someone that's not athletic run in a race. Like, is that even fair? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we kind of said to him, wow, the people in this season 1 Australia have no problem with verbal language. And we do, so maybe we're not right for this. I was really not sure. And he answered brilliantly, and he said, we want to show more diversity of the spectrum. And when he said that, he said, we're just going to tell her story. I felt it would be wrong not to try to participate because our struggles are sometimes visible. And we've been judged by that since she was a little kid and gotten glances and stares and things like that. I don't begrudge anyone for doing that. I think it's fine because it's normal to just say, hey, what's that struggle over there? It's just curiosity almost. So if we could raise awareness for this part of the spectrum, we wanted to. And I thought it was important for him to show that part of the spectrum, obviously.
And you guys have told your stories, but it is built into this beautiful love story. Am I allowed to ask if you and David are still together?
Yes, we are.
I'm allowed to ask that one. And I love how your face lights up whenever we mention him. Maybe for people who are watching, I would love it if you could tell us 3 things that you really like about him.
He supports me. He treats me kindly. He treats me like a princess or even a mermaid.
I've also noticed that while you guys don't necessarily love the same things, you really appreciate what the other one loves. And that feels...
He loves milk. I like lima beans.
And does he like lima beans?
No.
But he appreciates that you like lima beans. You guys get to go on a fabulous trip during season 2, like a trip of a lifetime. And it was just so fun to watch the two of you enjoy that, Abby. Did
Thank
you have
you.
the trip of a lifetime for you? Did you love it?
Mm-hmm.
I'm dying to know what your favorite part is, but I don't want to spoiler alert it for anybody. So we'll hold off on that. Unbelievably, we're already starting to run low on time, but I do have to ask the question of both of you, because we're on social media here, and it is such a mixed bag. We are so thrilled by some of the stuff that people write to us, and it's so wonderful. But there's also, in anything, there's stuff that isn't great. But when you put yourself out there, all kinds of stuff is going to come in. So maybe if we start with Christine, and if Abby wants to jump in, what's it been like in terms of social media, being so out there, being reality television stars at this point?
Well, I think that it's twofold, the social media experience. And my experience is different than Abby's because I'm trying to share from the caregiver point of view, and having just, been actively front lines of autism interventions for, basically almost 24 years. And I've learned a lot. I live in a great state that has excellent supports and intervention and diagnostic opportunities. So that's the good part. So when I share something that I've learned or something that I did, and I get messages from other countries, people that don't have services, people that aren't as involved, or their kid is not as obviously in need, but they're on the spectrum. And I get messages of gratitude almost every day of people saying, I don't have any other resource other than this. Because I spent so much of my life involved in hours and hours and hours of therapies, IEPs, I do feel like, okay, I was blessed to have great people help me learn. And that's the good part. The bad part is that the explosion of communication on social media has allowed for new voices to emerge. And there is a population of people who I think are misunderstood, are on the spectrum in a different capacity than Abby. And that particular population is angry and upset and doesn't feel heard. So no matter what I post, they just hate you. And that makes me sad because all those people are people who are autism level 1 or self-diagnosed. And they can be very cruel and mean. And I try to just keep posting for those that are something resonates with them. I don't claim to be right. I have a hashtag that says Abby's Autism for a reason, letting people know that this is the kind of autism that we are dealing with, because the terminology to me is vague in today's world. After 2013 and when the DSM-5 changed, I'm all pro services for everybody, from typical people getting therapy to stage, autism level 1 person getting their help, whatever that is, adaptive life skills, organizational life management, you name it, social skills is all great. But the inner fighting within the supposed community is really tragic from my experience.
It's very wearing, and I'd love to know how you deal with that. While you're trying to do this really good thing, how do you manage that when somebody is just like, no matter what
I have to remind myself 2 things. If I put myself in their shoes, okay, let's say it's somebody, and I've met a ton of people who I would call, under the umbrella of autism, neurodivergent. They may have formally been called PDD, pervasive developmental disorder, or perhaps Asperger's. But under that neurodivergent word, you have someone that has amazing skills, but needs these supports or these services. And some of those services haven't even been created yet, like organizational life management, adaptive life skills, people that don't know how to navigate an airport or get in a cab or even buy their groceries, that have jobs, but they have other limitations that are operating from maybe a sensory deficit. But they present as neurotypical. That's, someone gave me that phrase, which I kind of liked. It made me have an understanding. And then you've got other people who needed massive interventions to function. And it's almost 2 different experiences. Okay. So what we had is completely different. There's almost no crossover. So they're yelling and screaming. And I try to put myself in their shoes and say, look, I was never diagnosed. I was misunderstood. I didn't get any supports because I was verbal. My parents didn't understand me. I was bullied at school. And now here I am today. That's not good. And I put myself in that person's shoes and I say, they can hate me all they want. I forgive them.
Yeah. That's a great
The
way to-
energy should be channeled at the school system because nobody should fall through the cracks like that. And those skills like organizational life management or sensory integration should be identified when kids are in first and second grade and implemented in the school setting, because that's more important than math. Right?
I couldn't
Okay,
agree.
that's one part of it, so that nobody graduates from high school feeling misunderstood, bullied, and be lacking in certain social awareness, which is tragic and painful for them.
Yeah.
So that population, it's really great we're talking about it, but a lot of those people are people that hate me just because I helped Abby. I mean, I could say, here's $1 million, they'd still hate me. They're just angry. And I feel bad because life's too short to carry that anger around. And I would think, I wish they would take their stories to advocate for either educational change or diagnostic change so that that population gets specific services, because they didn't need speech to talk because they're already talking. So
Yeah.
their experience of autism is internalized. Abby's is not internalized. And we have many people, as you know, on the spectrum that in 2 seconds, you see all the fun antics of that person who can't mask because they're not aware enough to mask. They don't care about masking. And Abby, do you know what masking is?
No.
I mean, that's not even in our vocabulary. So then you have two diametrically opposed experiences under the umbrella of autism, and they're fighting, and they have nothing in common.
Yeah.
And they're saying you're doing it wrong. And parents are now scared to do certain therapies because a population that didn't need that therapy is saying that therapy is wrong. But the therapy that first population needs hasn't even been created yet.
There you
And
go.
I'm doing this because my eyes are really open to the neurodivergent population, people who may not want to be called autistic, people whose brains truly work differently. I told you my day job, I work with scientists, the Farrah Fawcett Foundation. We do HPV cancer research and support. I'm lucky enough to go to a scientific summit every January, and these scientists will present amazing immunotherapy updates on projects that we may or may not have funded. But in that, I talked to one of my head scientists and I was telling her about this. And I was telling her about masking and I was telling her about the language. And she said, oh, half my team is Asperger's. And she started laughing. I said, well, we can't say that word anymore. But those people still exist. That population is still there. And they don't want to call themselves autistic.
No.
But the idea that somebody loves the acquisition of knowledge versus chit-chatty social interaction, to me, is just a preference. It's a preferred wiring. It's the way your brain works. There's nothing disabled about that.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean they don't need supports. They need understanding. They need accommodations. They may need supports too, but I'm just saying, like, we've got to start rethinking how we're thinking this, because now everyone's going, oh, I'm seeing on TikTok that I have sensory issues. I don't like loud noise. I don't like the heat. I must be autistic. I go to a diagnostic doctor. I wait my 6 months. I get my appointment. I say all these things, and the doctor says, you're on the spectrum. And now you see, you've got somebody who's heard, and they are micro-examining their humanness, their human experience, and saying, well, I have those things. Everybody has sensory preferences. Every single person on the planet right now does. So I think we just have to be careful about the sort of sharing of knowledge. I truly wish, my personal humble opinion after 24 years and seeing how things have shifted and changed, I wish that there was a firm either sensory processing disorder diagnosis that was recognized on its own for people, because I think sensory issues are misunderstood. They're clumped in with autism, and that's why we're seeing an explosion. And that sensory support needs to be implemented in first grade. We should be able to identify kids, have therapies, have strategies in the classroom setting, pull kids out that need to run around and move, because that's just how they're wired. But we kind of doing things kind of, it's all jumbled up right now, and it makes me sad. I have 1 million haters in the level 1 population just for helping Abby. You did it wrong. Free Abby. You're a terrible mother. And I know that person's hurting, so that's kind of the way I look at it. They don't want to know my story. They're just very angry.
And they're evil.
And they're evil. So, but
Abby,
Abby doesn't see
so
too much of
smart.
it.
Your mom is so smart, Abby.
Yeah, can I have a break?
Absolutely. And I love that. You can absolutely have a break. Do you need to
Thank
turn
you.
your camera off while I talk to mom, or you want
You
to?
can push the computer down, Abs.
But
Oh, there she goes.
No,
thank you for asking for the break. Come back whenever you're ready. You take as much time as you need. You know, and I just want to say that is a measure of how right you are doing it.
Oh,
That she said, "Can I have a break?"
and we told her that. Like I honor all of her sensory needs and try to just say, like, if Shannon asks you a question you don't understand, just say, I don't understand the question. Please say it a different way. Like,
Yeah.
I'm trying to, for me, every single person, however they're impacted by the spectrum, needs to be able to identify their own sensory needs. Now, I can do it automatically because I know when I walk into a loud restaurant, it's my least favorite environment for dinner. Loud, big, high ceilings, clinkety clankety. I have a reaction to that. That does not mean I'm on the spectrum. And I want to honor people who really are on the spectrum because they're the fighters. They're the ones, you know, for me to jump on that bandwagon is, for me personally, seems wrong, especially after how hard Abby has worked. You know, my son actually taught me something this week, which I was very proud of him. Abby's brother, Ben, he said, he did a video on ADHD. Yes, ADHD. He said, I have ADHD. Here's how I handle it. Da, 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 da. And many people wrote to him and said, you're on the spectrum then. You're neurodivergent. And he said, no, I'm not. I just have ADHD. I deal with it. It's not an issue. I have a whiteboard. I write stuff down and check it off to keep me organized. And I kind of loved his perspective on it because I think that there is some people that kind of move on with self-awareness, but there's some people that I think are being held up in a vacuum of wanting to feel disabled or thinking they're disabled, or rather than push throughing it and saying, okay, what do I need to move on with my day? Get that thing you need. No one's saying that you shouldn't get support. My eye is so in tune with people that are neurodivergent that I can even tell when someone that's on the cusp of that neurodivergent thing, I can see them struggling with life skills, and I'll go, that's what needs to happen. That person needs life skills training where you learn how to go to an airport and navigate all the step 1, 2, and 3 of something. There's a lot of people, I do a lot of that on my TikTok. Like, I'll show Abby, what do we do at the gate? I mean, I actually had a nightmare one time that I had dropped Abby off at the airport and I zoomed off. And then I had this phone call of her just screaming and nobody knew where she was. And she was lost in an airport and just got on a plane somewhere and I never saw her again. And when that happened in my dream and my nightmare, I brought her to the airport on our next trip and I make her navigate the airport. What's the gate? What's the airline? What do we do first? Where's the sign? And I make her lead me.
You're such a reasonable voice in the storm, and I really appreciate that. I'm very fond of saying for myself, I love self-advocates. I truly, truly do. But I always follow that with, but a lot of them don't like me. and that I just accept that I absolutely love them and I love them unconditionally, but I understand that a lot of them don't like me. And probably don't like is the nice way of saying. Some of them probably very much hate me. But I will say that, you know, in the last couple of years, it's been very rewarding for me that I have friends that are on the spectrum that are very mover shaker kind of people that are very outspoken. And I'm all, you know, like sometimes something will happen and I'll say, this is my stance on this, but is that offensive to you? And I love that they have said, no, we understand that you're looking at it differently than we are. And you're looking at it from a very specific lens. And we may not agree with everything that you say, but we understand that you care deeply about the rights of people on the spectrum. Yeah. So you're allowed to have your own opinion. And that has been like so powerful in my life. Because I was just saying this earlier today that with my son, I love that there are times now that he disagrees with me and we can say, oh, but I'm looking at it a different way. So we agree to disagree is the most powerful thing that can be. on
Yeah,
the
I agree with that. And I also just think I try to put myself in their shoes, and I truly am highly aware of neurodivergent individuals, people struggling with social skills. And I think when you're a parent like I have, I know 40 to 50 people in my realm of people on the spectrum over Abby's years, people from Spec Lab, people from the Miracle Project, people from Miller, the Help Group. And you've just been through a myriad of different manifestations of autism. And so, but some people that come on, the haters or someone is kind of in their story with a few friends. And I think sometimes part of being neurodivergent is a different take on being reciprocal. In other words, but it's not ego based. It's neurologically based. They see the world from that experience as Abby does, but it's not egotistical. It's
No.
coming from their lived experience. And so I feel like it's it's their pain and hurt that is speaking. They cannot see the other side, and that's part of being neurodivergent.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
I agree completely. But
And
I love that you're speaking out about this on TikTok, that you have your stories on Instagram, and that it is resonating with people, Christine, or you wouldn't have a million followers.
well, thank you for that. It's hard sometimes because I'm a person that doesn't like to cause waves. I know I don't even like attention like that. And if you look at my very first post on my TikTok, it was because Abby's account got shut down. Someone reported her for having a glass of wine. Apparently, they thought she was a child. And even though she was 24 at the time, I took over the page because we were going on a big trip. And we had a lot of her followers wanting to follow this trip. So I inadvertently posted to just share her story. And then at the end of 2 weeks, when her account came back, I had, I don't know, 300,000 followers and some positive feedback. So I thought, oh, I guess I'll keep doing this, but please go to her page for the more exciting stuff. And it kind of took off from there. But it is hard at times because I can tell you, I recently did a post where I'm trying to address, wow, how can people in this population be so diametrically opposed in how autism manifests in them? Somebody's got perfect language and their struggle is all on the inside. So they can mask and they can pass for neurotypical, which might be even harder if your sensory system is all askew. Then you've got Abby, who doesn't mask, who was diagnosed in 5 minutes, which I didn't want, and I told them they were wrong. So they're two different experiences. So when I ask for clarification of language, it's not to belittle anyone's anything. It's to say, how do we create effective supports or interventions if we don't have anything to call it? We have a million traits. It's like a needle in the haystack. So
Yeah.
here is pivotal response training. I'm going to throw it in the haystack and make the parent or caregiver go find it as a therapy. Here's organizational life skills. I'm going to throw that in the docket and the parent or caregiver can go find it. In other areas, like I always say this in say the mental illness arena, we've got names and behaviors for many, many, many diagnostic criteria. OCD, occupational defiance disorder, compulsive hoarding, manic depression, bipolar. And you don't see those populations fighting amongst themselves,
No.
telling someone they did it wrong. Why are we doing this? I think autism should be an umbrella. And there should be 10 different slots. And I should never be fighting with a person that's non-speaking about what they did or didn't do, the parent or caregiver. I have no place or right. I don't know that world enough. I've met several people who are non-speaking and watched some of the growth. One girl I'm thinking of in Spec Lab, who I've known since she was 3, and she's non-speaking and she's playing the violin now. And I cry every time I see her because it's amazing what she's accomplished, but you can't fully appreciate that if you don't know where she started.
No.
I think we need to know, when was someone diagnosed, and that we should be able to have language that helps us understand the journey for that person.
Absolutely.
But we don't. Everyone's afraid of offending somebody or using the wrong language. High support, low support, 1, 2, 3. That's so vague. I mean, how do you create it? And the more I talk to recently diagnosed, undiagnosed, or late diagnosed, I say, what support do you need?
Yeah.
I need a lot of support. What do you specifically need? And many of them don't know. And then I say, let me tell you what I think you need, which I have no right saying, because I have been watching, and it's the social skills, understanding of social situations, all of the social component, life skills, organizational life management, like how to move, how to buy a car, how to use the bus system. And I think some of those big life things shut people down that have different processing, because it's easy for us to do it, but not for them. And I feel like that should be taught in high school.
I
Nobody should be
completely
fighting for
concur.
that service outside of high school. They're entitled to a free and appropriate education. We should be labeling neurodivergent, autistic or not, wherever they are, but if we can identify that population, then the school should be responsible for helping them be happier adults. There should be counseling, there should be supports, and I'm not sure why we're not doing that. And my analogy is, if my son got an orange folder from Los Angeles Unified School District when he was 7, identifying him as a gifted student, I was like, well, wait a minute. If you could identify him as a gifted student, you can surely identify a neurodivergent kid, someone who's having trouble socially, someone who's isolating, somebody who's maybe learning differently, but presents with some interesting splinter skills. Maybe they're not on the spectrum in that classic way, but surely we could create supports for them. You got the teachers, you already have classes set up. If you got a class for the smart kids, why can't you have a class for the neurodivergent kids?
Well, when are you going to run for office?
I've been told that before, and I said, as soon as I win the lotto, I will definitely do it. That's when my mission would really begin.
All right. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. I don't want to pressure Abby to come back in, but I just make sure that she knows that she was lovely and divine and that she can come back whenever she wants. And next time we'll make sure that it's just shorter duration.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We can take that note. But tell her how much we adore her and how much we're loving watching their story. As a mom, it's gotta be amazing for you to watch her find love.
I've cried, as you have seen many times on camera, because I really truly can't contain it. I mean, it's been the joy of my life, and as it is for, I think, every parent on the spectrum or not on the spectrum, to see just happiness in your loved one and your child, and the family's amazing, and the show's been amazing, and Abby has grown so much from the show. It's just so inspiring for me. I mean, like I said before, you can't imagine the growth from since age 18. So I want to tell everybody, keep the faith, follow your instincts, think outside the box. Don't take no for an answer if your instincts are telling you otherwise, and keep being creative with what your kid needs, and never, ever compare your loved one on the spectrum to anyone else.
There we go. And he is an amazing young man. I know you cannot say anything. Don't blink, don't do anything, but we're all hoping for a wedding. I'm glad Abby wasn't here to hear that, because I don't want to feed into that, but we're all hoping for a wedding. Like a bunch of old yentas, we're like, knitting things and hoping for the wedding. So anyway, thank you so much for all that you do in the community. And thanks for giving me permission to be on the red carpet all those years ago. And thanks for being a wonderful mom. Abby is a delight. And I've never met your son, but I have a feeling he's a delight too.
He is. And we've had a lot of fun, single mom, my whole life. We've got Bob and Mike, my two best friends who are married. We met at the local school. They adopted 2 sons, and they live in the house behind us. So it's just like a lovely, fun family, as non-traditional as you can imagine. But, at the end of the day, having fun is the most important thing, and enjoying laughter together. And Ben is equally proud of his sister, and he's been a great support to me. He's been the man of a house for a long time, and we couldn't have done it without him.
Well, if you guys have enjoyed this talk and you're like, oh my gosh, I got to be more around this energy, I really want to encourage you. We've got Christine's TikTok is Abby's Mom 17, at Abby's Mom 17. Your Instagram is Christine Abby's Mom. We can go to at Hats by Abby for absolutely everything. Go buy yourself a hat and check it out, because they're lovely. They're beautiful, beautiful, stylish, wonderful hats. So, and thank Abby for taking the time with us.
I will, and I'm going to be posting some longer form content on YouTube, my YouTube, which is Christine, Abby's mom, on YouTube, and because they're allowed for a little bit more longer content, a little bit more kind of educational or observations, and some interviews with a variety of different types of people on the spectrum.
Wonderful. Fantastic. I can't wait to see it. And then, we'll have you back on because
That would be great.
what a
And I
wonderful.
want to thank you for all you do and have done over the years in this arena. You rock.
I try, but I'm getting down to it. I'm like going through that thing of, okay, what do I want to do before I retire? That's right where I'm at. Which is a sweet spot to be at. But wonderful, wonderful to be with you guys. Give everybody a hug for us.
Yes, will do. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
darling. Bye.
Bye. I can't believe we're already out of this hour, but I want to remind everybody, and we went a little over, that on Monday, Vince Redmond will be with us. He is an autism expert who happens to also be an LMFT, and he's going to be talking with us about caregiver parent stress. I always like to give the disclaimer that being a parent of somebody on the spectrum is considered more stressful than being a parent of somebody who's not on the spectrum, but that is not because of the person on the spectrum. That is because we're always wanting to be the best possible advocate for our kiddos, and there are things we don't know, and they don't make it easy. So Vince is going to be with us and talk about how we can cope with that stress, how we can lean into supports so that we can get through that and get back to being with our kiddos, which is the fun part. And then for our very last day of April on Tuesday, Dr. Doreen Granpeche will be here, and the topic will be building language. All the things that we can be doing to build that communication, build that connection that all of us want so much with our loved ones on the spectrum. So, and that will close out the month. It has been a month, can I say? But so thrilling to have been with so many wonderful guests. And we're continuing shows in May, just not at the hell-bent pace we have been doing it. So that's all. Anyway, we will be back on Monday. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.
If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much. See you next time.